My name is Yasir and I am from Delhi, India. My friend Ravi lives in London, who was a partner in this project. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with me in this recording, but I want to quickly go through on what we made. So we made a smart city project to push the contracts that happen between landlord and tenants to the blockchain, and also the government, and also the validation by the government of that property that the landlord puts up for rent. In UAE, there are 92% of expats and migrants, so there are a lot of people who live on rent. And personally, a friend of mine had to go through a problem where the landlord exorbitantly increased the rent when she wanted to upgrade, uh, extend the contract, the tenancy contract. So we want to solve that pain point by pushing these rules to the blockchain. And when our landlord updates their rent, we are going to proactively check the rule for that location set by the government on how much the rent can be and how much can it be increased. So we can proactively either validate or invalidate the rent increase, and then solve any future litigations that might happen between the tenant and the landlord, and also make life easier for everybody involved in this contract. So we've got three apps in this project. One is for the tenant, one is for the landlord, and one is for the government. So the landlord first creates a contract for the house, and we'll go through how that happens. So here it is. And landlord clicks on the plus at the top right. Now he has to select the location of the house, uh, which is just going to the map and finding the location. So let's say we want this location. Okay, so we got the address, and then the landlord has to put in the property type, the bedroom type, and the different properties attributes of this apartment. So then he has to enter the rent and the security deposit that he wants, and these are in the Sabo unit. And then he has to create the contract. So now this goes to the blockchain, and we are now just waiting for the confirmation of the block to be mined. So now we should be getting a confirmation anytime. There we are. So now it says contract created and waiting for the government to approve it. And now the government gets the notification to approve this contract. So now, as the contract has been made, we should be getting a validation request to the government. Uh, it should come up on the screen. There it is. So now this request has come to the government, which is HRA in this rule, and all the data, including landlord name and the property type and the location of that apartment on the map, is shown in this validation request. So the government can then either approve it. So now I have approved it, and it's trying to validate the property by doing a transaction on the blockchain on the Ethereum cloud. But the government can also disapprove it based on some reason, and then a notification is sent to the landlord that the property has been invalidated or has been disapproved, and then further action can be taken upon. So an invalid property can never be given to a tenant. Only a valid property can be taken up by a tenant. So we are trying to get a confirmation from the Ethereum block. It should be anytime soon. And the property has been validated. So now a notification goes out to the landlord. So now, since the government has approved the contract, the landlord gets a notification that the property has been validated. So now the landlord can go ahead and then put this up on rent. The landlord can also update the rules. So when the landlord updates the rule for this house, it goes to the same blockchain, so the same contract, and then checks the validity for this updation. Uh, and this happens, and this should happen when the tenant wants an extension to the contract. So now the idea is for the government to update HRE rules based on which the landlord can update their rent on the contract when a tenant then asks for an extension for the contract. So the government can then go and to the HRE rules section and create a new rule for a location, for a specific location. So they can go to the map, check for a location, and then based on the house type and the bedroom type, they can set a specific amount of rent that can be taken from the tenant. So I'm setting this to 20, the maximum rate percent increase, and the maximum rent can be 4,000, and these are in Sabo unit for Ethereum. So now I'm adding this rule into that contract, into the HRE rules contract. So whenever a landlord wants to extend the tenant's contract, they have and they want to update the rent, then that updated rent is checked with these rule for this location, and based on this rule, the update can be cancelled, or validated or invalidated. So just waiting for confirmation from the blockchain for this rule, and there it is. The rule has been added now. Has been validated by the government. The landlord can then put it up for rent, and when the tenant and the landlord are face to face, the landlord can just send the details of the house to the tenant by tapping their phones together. It's via NFC, so we should be getting that. And there we go. The details are now sent to the tenant's phone, and then the tenant can just click over here and pay, and the Ethereum gets transferred to the landlord, and the security deposit as well gets stored in the contract, and which acts as a escrow account. And when the contract gets terminated for this tenant, then the security deposits, it gets split between the landlord and the tenant, and the contract ends between the landlord and the tenant.